We exchanged vows later in our lives. I was 29, she was 32 6 years ago. Prior to meeting each other, we were thoroughly enjoying our independence, which left us with little financial cushion. Our premarital discussions revolved around our shared desire to raise a family and for Julie to be a stay-at-home mum until our youngest began attending school. We both agreed that it was vital for our children's development to have a parent present at home full-time, provided our finances would allow. Consequently, we devised a strategy to accumulate as much savings as possible before expanding our family to cushion against potential hardships. This meant both Julie and I worked full-time, with me undertaking as much overtime as I could, particularly on Fridays, often resulting in late hours on Saturdays and an additional 12 hours of work. Our efforts were fruitful. We managed to pay off our mortgage in full, and our financial reserves were on an upward trajectory. Recently, the discussion of starting a family had become more immediate, aiming for before Julie reached 40 to maximize our fertility prospects. Thus, her suggestion on Thursday night took me by surprise. Dave, I believe we need to consider a temporary separation. The term skeptical doesn't fully capture my reaction. I was shell-shocked, to the point of being unable to process my thoughts clearly. My immediate bewildered response was, what? This is a familiar sensation for anyone who has experienced a partner walking away. The initiator is prepared, whereas the recipient is blindsided and confused. That was my exact state, utterly perplexed. My follow-up query echoed my confusion. Why? I just think a brief hiatus is necessary. You must acknowledge, Dave, your warmth has diminished and your affection isn't what it used to be. Your exhaustion precludes us from going out more than once in a blue moon. Our moments of closeness have become infrequent, and frankly, you've put on weight. Don't you believe a brief separation would benefit us? Let's try it for a month, Dave, then. Assess our situation. I'll stay with Freda. Feel free to call me, but let's limit our in-person interactions to no more than once a week. Anything more would barely constitute a separation, wouldn't it? Just keep in mind, Dave, my love for you is deep, and I'm optimistic about starting a family with you. I'm convinced that in a month, perhaps slightly longer, we'll return to our normal selves. With those words, Julie stood up, took her 2 suitcases, and headed for the door. Don't I have a voice in this, Julie? I barely managed to say. I've reached a decision, Dave. Please take a seat, Julie replied, sitting back down with reluctance. Who is it, Julie? I had a suspicion, I exclaimed. Dave, as I've said, my heart is with you. There is no one else. Thus there's no need for eavesdropping, tailing me, monitoring my car, or employing a detective. Actually, doing any of that would suggest a lack of trust from you, possibly leading me to reevaluate our relationship. She tried to stand once more, but I gently coaxed her to sit back down. It's not just, Julie. You've had days, maybe weeks, to craft your speech in this trial, whereas all of this is completely new to me. What trial? Dave. Julie's expression finally mirrored a sense of regret, aligning with my sense of dismay. You're jeopardizing our union, Julie. With these one-sided decisions, I highlighted her apparent disregard. What jeopardy, Dave? I love you, and you love me. Where's the problem? It's merely for a month, perhaps shorter. If I find myself missing you too much, I'll return immediately. What do you mean by disregard? I haven't even been afforded the opportunity to present my perspective. For example, our lack of outings is due to my additional work hours on Fridays and Saturdays, a mutual agreement to enhance our financial standing. The decrease in our intimate times is a combination of our 6-year tenure and my occupational stress. My weight gain is a result of your suggestion to accept a more lucrative, albeit demanding, supervisory role, not by choice. It's an issue I've been wanting to address with you, so could you please remain here so we can discuss this thoroughly? I'm sorry, Dave. I had assured Freda that I would spend this evening with her. Saying so, she rose, collected her things, and headed for the door. All I could say was a reminder of her marital status. Don't forget you're married, Julie. She paused briefly, then continued to the door. The next morning, I returned to work at 10 a.m., with sandwiches made from bread that was a week old. Later that night, I stopped by the round-the-clock store to pick up some essentials. Returning home after 11:30 p.m., I saw the flashing light of the voicemail indicator on my phone. It was a message from Julie saying she missed me and was thankful for the distance I maintained by not contacting her. This nay started to irritate me, as I was putting in effort to contribute 3 times more financially than she did, while she seemed to be enjoying her social activities. Strangely, I hadn't felt this way before. Neither of us reached out on Sunday. On Monday, I told my boss, regretfully, that I wouldn't be able to do any overtime for a while. By Wednesday, having not heard from me, Julie called, feeling a bit guilty for not being the one to reach out. I went to Frida's after dinner on Thursday, bringing flowers and chocolates as a peace offering. Frida, Julie's best friend who had been divorced for just over a year, likely had her divorce reasons tied to unfaithfulness, I assumed. She said Julie was showering. I took a seat on the couch, and Frida sat down next to me, closer than was comfortable. I moved slightly away, but she moved closer again. Just then, Julie came in. I gave her the flowers and chocolates. Our conversation was stiff, unlike our usual easy banter. After a bit of small talk, she asked if there was something I needed. Dave, was there something you wanted? I was puzzled by her question. No, I just came to ask my wife out for tomorrow night. Sorry, Frida, it seems we had plans. But tomorrow is Friday. You usually work Friday nights, not anymore. I quit. How will we manage financially? I've decided to prioritize our family and my health. After your message last Saturday night about you going out, I realized I had been overworking for no reason. Last Friday, I nearly passed out from exhaustion at work. Julie was taken aback. She came over and hugged me. No hard feelings, love, but I'm going to need your support soon. At that moment, Frida re-entered, changing the mood. Sorry, Dave, but we're about to start a Tupperware party. I left quickly, understanding some situations were better left unattended. Julie walked me to the door. Please come back, Julie. I miss you. Give it 3 more weeks, Dave. Then we can talk. She seemed uncomfortable saying it, as if she hated to refuse. Yet, any warmth disappeared when she suggested maybe you should cut back on the overtime to rest up. We'll need the extra money. Dave, I looked at the flowers and chocolates, now thoughtlessly abandoned, and walked away. My next visit was the following Tuesday. Julia was again in the shower. This time I did not make the same mistake and sat down on the couch. Frida, properly dressed this time, stood uncomfortably close as she talked. Julia, also clothed, looked somewhat embarrassed as she said I should have called first. Had I done so, I would have known they were about to head out. More than just feeling mortified to be hurried out, I was sure I heard laughter behind the door as I left. I promised myself never to be put in such an awkward position again. For the rest of that week, we did not contact each other. That Sunday, silence continued between us. I exercised in the backyard, using homemade weight training equipment, and felt I was beginning to regain my former strength. All of a sudden, I experienced the sensation of someone enfolding me from the rear, pressing their figure against my perspiring back. I was in the midst of enjoying my initial tactile interaction with another individual in a fortnight when I abruptly became immobilized upon hearing Frida's murmur near my ear, "Sorry, handsome, I couldn't help myself." Taken aback, I whirled around, extricating myself from her clutches, partly to mask my unease rather than out of courtesy. I proposed we have coffee. I noticed Frida was clad in one of her usual risque ensembles. I must admit, however, it showcased a considerable expanse of her bust. Once we were inside, I found myself sitting tentatively on the kitchen countertop, a position I did not maintain for long. Frida brought a chair right up to me, close enough that our feet brushed against each other. We exchanged pleasantries, an area not exactly my forte. You're not curious about Julie's well-being? No, she has explicitly expressed that it doesn't pertain to me, I countered. Frida smiled. You see, she's somewhat vexed. She assumed by this time you would be beseeching and groveling. I regret to inform you, Frida, but that's not in my nature, I retorted. Upon our initial encounter, I had made advances towards her, which she rebuffed, citing prior commitments. She did not initiate further communication, nor propose an alternate meeting. I remain oblivious to the implications of this hiatus, hence I am awaiting either her return or the termination of our union. I surmised that whatever I articulated would be relayed to Julia. Contrary to my expectation of astonishment from Frida at my conclusive remark, she merely grinned and laid her hand on my leg, appearing to gauge my reaction as if it were a test. Despite my lack of emotional attraction to Frida, her physical allure was undeniable. I observed an additional button on her top had come undone. "I've always admired you and Julie as a pair," she remarked. "Your confidence in your relationship must be solid to permit her engagements with other men, or perhaps you're feigning indifference." This comment chilled me. The notion of open relationships hadn't been broached in our unilateral separation, and my perspective, bear in mind you're wedded, was implicitly clear. Silently, I exited and drove directly to Frida's place. Entering without announcement, I glimpsed Julie through the kitchen window, lounging in swimwear on the patio. I approached her straight away. "Julie, what's this absurdity Frida's been spouting about you seeing others?" "I wasn't seeing anyone, Dave. We encountered a few guys at a club last Tuesday and danced a bit. We hinted we might meet them there again, but it hardly qualifies as dating." Julie's demeanor was more of determination than defensiveness. "And last evening?" "Merely more dancing. Completely innocent. They offered us drinks, and we danced some more. Nothing improper occurred." "Since when does it become acceptable for a wedded woman to dance with other men in her husband's absence? Let me suppose you intimated at another meeting. Such a meetup would definitely constitute a date and is clearly inappropriate." "Listen, Julie, this is causing me pain. I'm entirely in the dark about the reason for our separation. How about we end this 2-week period early and you return home? I miss you." "No, Dave, not yet. I think I need another month before my affection for you returns," she answered, her expression clouded once again, as though she voiced something she didn't wholeheartedly believe. Among her recent illogical acts, this one perplexed me the most. I merely gazed at her a bit longer before rising to depart. "You could invite me out again, you know. Luck might be on your side." This time she mentioned, "Without halting or glancing back, I departed. Or you might propose a date. You're aware of my address. From Monday onward, Julie started making nightly calls to our house. These dialogues were invariably short and awkward. It seemed she was simply verifying my presence. That particular Friday evening was not to my liking when she called me at 7 p.m. Having forwarded the landline to my cell as I had arranged, which worked without a hitch. The sound of music was clearly audible in the background. I was close to reaching Frida's and noticed the absence of Julie's vehicle. Roughly 10 minutes away from Frida's residence, I came across Julie's vehicle parked outside a tavern. Peering into the tavern's window, I spotted Julie and Frida seated alone in a booth. As I watched, 2 other women joined them. One I recognized to a degree as Julie's acquaintance, Deborah, and the other was a stranger to me. I observed Deborah making introductions between her and Julie and Frida. While they were engrossed, I sneakily made my way to a secluded spot and hid at the tavern's edge. With some difficulty, I was able to overhear a good portion of their dialogue. Deborah was commenting, "You're crazy, Julie. Judging from your tales, Dave is significantly more romantic than my spouse." Another voice, presumably the unknown woman, added, "Indeed, I concur. I'd be jealous of even a fraction of what you get from your former partner Frida then." Remarked, "Don't you think Julie merits better? Just observe her, she's stunning." Deborah said, "I'm hesitant, but this seems fraught with danger. What's your viewpoint on him, Julie? He seems to dedicate too much to his work. The man likely neglects most of his time. You manage to hold him at home every Sunday and truly treat him well." "If he were with me, I'd do precisely that," Julie spoke. Softly, making it impossible for me to hear her response, which went on for a few minutes. All I caught after Julie was done was Deborah beginning again, "And you've got this man making efforts for you." At that moment, someone started the jukebox. The tavern began filling up rapidly. I speculated about when more men would show up. Over the subsequent hour, I watched several men approach the women, attempting their luck, only to walk away disheartened. Then I saw the unknown woman approaching the bar. I moved aside to give her space as she came near my hiding spot. She acknowledged me with a smile and ordered 4 drinks. Up close, she appeared quite appealing with her short brown, curly hair and a friendly smile. As she waited for her drinks, she turned to me, inquiring, "Is this a place you come to often?" That was actually my line, "But you got there first," I responded. We struck up a light chat until her drinks were prepared. Her glance at my ring finger did not escape my notice owing to my profession. I rarely wear a ring. She surprised me by asking, "The conversation at my table is terrible. Would it bother you if I excused myself from them by claiming I'm with you?" How could I refuse a conversation with a charming lady? Absolutely, what do you say? But just so it's clear, I am married, though my marriage is going through difficult times, which is why I find myself here, I confessed. "Oh, I respect your honesty." "I'm just looking for some company, so if you're fine with it, I'd love to chat," she answered with a teasing smile, and returned in 2 minutes. We spent the next hour and a half in casual conversation, always. Cautious to ensure we weren't being watched, I noticed a man had joined the women's table and was covering their drinks. Sarah was a wonderful companion and we enjoyed our interaction. Around 11:30 p.m., Deborah came over and I failed to conceal myself in time. She looked confused, a feeling I shared. She knew she had seen me before but couldn't recall where. I smiled as Sarah introduced us. Deborah whispered something to Sarah, and I was almost certain of its content. "You're right, he is attractive," Julie then suggested. "Do you need a ride home?" Sarah appeared hesitant. "I must leave. It was a pleasure chatting with you, Sarah," I mentioned and gave her a peck on the cheek. She blushed, departed, then came back quickly to hand me a business card, smiling silently before going. I watched as all three women left, leaving Frida and the man at the table. I decided to give them a 5-minute lead in the parking lot. 2 minutes afterward, my phone displayed a call from Julie, utilizing the home phone's call forwarding. After saying hello, she questioned the music in the background, wondering if there was a party at our place. "I'm at the tavern, Julie. My evening was spent conversing with a delightful woman," I revealed. "What on earth, Dave? Who allowed you to do that?" she protested. "Are you implying that you are the only one available tonight? Are you insinuating that I am unavailable? Indeed you are, as throughout our marriage, I expect you to behave in a manner that is fitting." "Didn't you call me from the bar?" "Ah, yes. And it seems those guys from last time didn't show, did they?" "No, it seems not." "Listen, Dave, I've already told you that I'm not dating anyone." It was quite a sight to see her confused look. "Listen, Julie, why not put an end to this absurdity and go back to the way things used to be? Come back home." "I'll be waiting for you there." Then there was silence. "No, I apologize, Dave. I'm just not ready yet, all right. Why not stay over tonight?" "No, I'm sorry, really sorry, Dave. I'll give you a call later." I continued to reflect on everything I had learned that night without coming to any clear conclusions. I felt that this time the situation was definitely getting out of hand. Frida showed up Saturday afternoon. I asked her what in the world her friend was thinking, but her denial seemed less convincing this time. When she tried to kiss me, I was ready. I kept her at arm's length. "What are you trying to do, Frida? I am married to your best friend, for crying out loud." "For now, Dave. I was just wondering if there might be a possibility after Julie leaves you." It was so contrived it was almost laughable, but it confirmed my suspicions. "You're talking about if Julie leaves." "Exactly, Dave. I really hope you're okay with it." Sharing my unease about the situation, I walked her to the door. Frida hesitated to leave. Eventually, I had to clearly tell her that her behavior was completely unacceptable. "Are you and Julie planning to go out again tonight?" "Yes, it looks like it." That was the last thing we said to each other. I reached out to Sarah. She was happy to hear from me but was unavailable tonight. She suggested Tuesday. I felt it was necessary to clarify to her, "Listen, Sarah, we are just friends. I am currently caught in a rather complicated personal matter. I really enjoyed spending time with you last night. I commit to treating you with utmost respect until this is all sorted out." After mentioning she liked our conversation and her situation was also quite complicated, she ended the call, eagerly anticipating Tuesday. Monday morning marked a shift in my relationship with Julia. She started calling me at 6 a.m. every weekday, then around 6 p.m. when I usually got home from work, and once more before going to bed, claiming she missed me, yet she consistently declined my invitations for her to return. It became clear to me that I was undergoing a test. On Tuesday, Sarah welcomed me at her apartment door, and we left straight away. She looked incredible. As soon as we sat down in the restaurant, I broached the topic. "So, are you ready to talk about the reasons behind the turmoil in your personal life?"
Yes.
Her name is Hannah. I discovered Hannah was Sarah's 3-year-old daughter. Her father had concluded that life with a family was too burdensome. Sarah's mother was taking care of her that day, trying to keep her from asking too many questions about my own complicated situation. At the bar, I changed the subject. "You said the conversation at your table was particularly unpleasant. What was all that about?" "Ah, those terrible discussions and ridiculous people. There was a woman named Julie. She had just separated from her husband temporarily, yet she stubbornly wanted to get back together with him. They were thinking of starting a family, and she broke it off with him in hopes of making him chase after her, longing for more attention, more romantic gestures and the like. Sadly, when she talked about what he had been doing, he was actually making a considerable effort. He would surprise her with flowers every week, take her out on dates monthly, and constantly tried to spoil her, despite working late every Saturday. On Sundays, he'd wake up early to make her breakfast. Last year, he even surprised her with a cruise trip. Honestly, I would have been ecstatic to receive even half of that attention from my former partner. It also made my friend Deb feel down. She never gets anything like that. Some women just don't realize the value of what they have, it seems. Believe me, it gets even more absurd. Even before they separated, she did everything in her power to provoke his jealousy. For example, she would come home from girls' nights out increasingly late, intentionally wearing the scent of men's cologne. There was an instance where she was gifted lingerie by her pal Frida, which had been previously owned by Frida's paramour. The state of these garments was left to the imagination. She neglected them on the floor of her room till the following day, and her spouse failed to notice them whatsoever. My perception is that her spouse is either excessively naive or his adoration for her was so strong that he consciously ignored these episodes. When their attempts were fruitless, the two women devised a scheme aiming at a temporary split. The goal was to stir him into desperate action to win her back, yet he exhibited no reaction. His lack of response led them to escalate their measures. She halted all communication with him, which he equally ignored. Subsequently, her accomplice hinted to him about her possibly dating someone new. Despite their efforts, the man remained indifferent. Frankly, I hold him in high regard. I'd respond similarly if faced with such treatment. What disheartened me was the moment Deb questioned the extent of her commitment to the marriage. That's when Julie appeared to acknowledge the one-sided nature of her involvement. You'd think such a realization would end her imprudent behavior, yet it persisted. Now, caught in a bind and unsure of the next steps, all due to one individual's arrogance and refusal to meet expectations. She, Dem, Pray, could indeed reconcile, admit to everything, and mend their bond. That's the approach I'd take, and it seems she's inclined to do so as well. Furthermore, I suspect her friend plays a part in the turmoil. Last Friday, Frida gave her several inscrutable looks, likely trying to sow discord and take her place. You might be onto something. It aligns with my observations, though it paints her as a callous, vindictive figure. Were I the husband, navigating their complex relationship dynamics would be challenging, but I'd be inclined to depart from the erratic, problematic spouse for someone who appreciates me genuinely. At that moment, our dinner was served, prompting a shift to lighter conversation topics. My comfort level with Sarah was surprising. As the waiter removed the empty glasses, I grappled with the facade. Sarah, your viewpoints mark you as a deeply principled and upright person. Oh, thank you, dear gentleman. Do you see me as honorable? Instantly, Sarah replied. I trust my judgment in character, and I believe you to be a man of integrity. Alas, this will be difficult. Extending my hand across the table, I softly clasped her hands, possibly to deter her departure. Taking a deep breath, I disclosed, "Forgive me, Sarah, for I have been misleading. My excuse is the turmoil and urgent need for clarity I find myself in. I respect you greatly, thus I owe you the whole truth. Let me introduce myself accurately. I am Dave, and for 6 years, I've been Julie's spouse. A month ago, she insisted on a separation trial against my desires. This evening, a recent acquaintance advised me to leave her, considering the severe disrespect and pain she has caused. Your insight was very much accurate. I've always treated her with utmost respect, but only now do I." See her minimal effort. Watching Sarah's expression transition to shock, she covered her mouth in astonishment. "Goodness, did I speak so critically of your wife? Indeed, she has acted very unwisely. Clearly, your concern wasn't the misleading I conducted, but how your words might impact me. This further proves your commendable character." "Could I be excused?" "Somewhat, yes, but your reasoning is understandable. Is that why you engaged with me on Friday night, in pursuit of an informant? Remember, you were the one engaging with me. Can I count on your support through this ordeal, in whatever form it may conclude?" "Indeed, Dave, yet I can offer only my friendship. I have no intention of causing harm to your marital bond. I appreciate your friendship, and that is currently sufficient for me. From where I stand, our marriage seemed perfectly happy, with no indication that Julia was unhappy. One Thursday, after coming home from work, she suggested we try separating temporarily. She almost left, but I managed to get her to explain, though her reasons did little to clear up my bewilderment as I devote myself entirely to my job and to Julie. My circle of close friends is non-existent. Can this be fixed? I'm not sure, Sarah. A big part of me thinks it would be. Completely irrational to take her back after what she's done. Moreover, talking to you has opened my eyes to how one-sided our relationship was. I'm a bit embarrassed to admit this. We then naturally changed the subject to more neutral topics. Our evening turned out nice, ending when Sarah suggested changing the subject. I advised her to think it over and let me know. I added that I'd understand if I never heard from her again. The following day, as I was walking to the grocery store, someone shouted my name from a cafe down the street. Turning around, I saw Julie, Frida, and another woman with her back to me. Approaching the table, my heart dropped when I recognized Deborah. She unintentionally gave herself away upon spotting me. The expected phone call came at 9:30 p.m. I was almost asleep, and nobody's at their best in that state. Dave, didn't I warn you about snooping on me? Your actions just confirm your lack of trust and complete disrespect towards me. See it from my side, Julie, you initiate this scenario without explaining its aim. Wouldn't it make sense for me to seek answers myself? It was a clear violation of our understanding. Dave, your understanding, Julie interjected. Dave, my dear, I'm confused by all this. This trial separation isn't going as I thought it would. I'm starting to question whether my love for you is as strong as it needs to be. Maybe we should extend it a few more months to figure things out. She stopped, clearly, waiting for my response. I kept silent. Unless her viewpoint has changed since last Friday, this was just a tactic to make me try harder. The saying goes, if at first you don't succeed, try again. I was more fond of the mining variation. If at first you don't succeed, use more dynamite the next time. Just prolonging the separation seemed like a way to underscore her dwindling regard for me. Obviously, there was more to it. Okay, Dave, I was hesitant to bring this up, but in the interest of fairness, I believe I should see other people. Perhaps that will help me appreciate your value and rediscover my feelings for you. She paused once more, waiting for my reaction. My silence this time was out of shock. When I did speak, I chose to remain silent, knowing that whatever I said probably wouldn't change anything. Are you there, Dave? I stayed quiet. I debated revealing that I knew her true motives. If I exposed everything, she might come back, but the underlying problem would remain. Dave, it would be a very bad idea to date Julie. Just to be clear, if you date or engage in any behavior that's inappropriate for a married woman, then I will consider you to have left our marriage. By inappropriate, I mean going out with a man more than once, dancing, touching, or kissing another man. Do you understand? I'm not sure if our marriage can be saved, even if you come back tonight, but I'm willing to try. Please come back to where you belong, Julie. This time she was silent. Well, I don't think you're in any position to make demands, Dave. You don't own me. At this point, I started to really question Julie's logic. Do I need to point out that her lack of romantic interest was because she avoided it? So, Julie, you're choosing to explore outside our marriage. Remember, you never gave me a satisfactory reason for this separation. The best guess I had was that you were trying to push me to put more effort into our relationship. I dismissed that idea as too simplistic. The silver lining of you leaving was it gave me time to think. I've realized that I might have put in much more into our relationship than you did. And then there was silence again until she interrupted him. This time her voice was nearly breaking, as though she was finally seeing the flaws in a plan she had not fully thought through. I'm sorry, Dave, but I've made up my mind. The call ended with a buzz, and I felt it marked the end of our marriage as well. On Thursday night, Sarah called to assure me I was completely exonerated. My gratitude was beyond what words could convey. She asked about recent happenings, stating her interest was purely friendly. I shared my latest interactions with Julia, offering theories on her possible intentions. What's the strategy now, Dave? Are you going to just wait and see if she sabotages our marriage? So, you're suggesting I follow her around this weekend? Dave, that's not what I mean, Sarah countered. Why not find out their location and have me join you there? I'm not willing to stoop to that level, though it's an interesting proposal. I'd like to spend time with you this weekend. After a short negotiation, we planned a picnic for Sunday without any complications. She didn't question my unavailability on Friday or Saturday, she just got it. Our chat lasted roughly 2 hours. Finding Julie and Frida on Friday was easy. Their choice of the well-known pub suggested either Julie thought I wouldn't dare spy on her, or she expected it. From a window, I watched the scene, feeling a bit ashamed of my actions. That evening, Julia was faultless. just mingling with Frida and Deborah. They talked until 10 p.m., with only Frida accepting offers to dance. Eventually, two men approached, focusing on Julie and Frida. After Deborah left, the four remained at their table. The women frequently glanced around the dimly lit bar. When Julie and Frida left together at 11:30, I felt a strange relief, following their taxi to their home and waiting until the lights went out. Saturday brought a different scenario. At the same bar, those two men were there early, immediately interacting with them upon their 8:05 p.m. arrival. The moment Frida danced with one of them, it was clear my marriage was over. The other man approached Julie, touching her thigh. Julie looked around the bar several times within the 5 minutes before she noticed me and pushed his arm away. Her face bore a smug look as she confronted me. "Dave, I warned you about spying." Again the man stood, torn between confrontation and escape. Ignoring etiquette, I closed in, leveraging my height to sternly advise him to go. He did, and as I focused on Julie, I presented the divorce papers from my coat. These are the divorce documents for an amicable separation, but with an additional agreement on asset distribution. It appeared equitable to split everything evenly, with me keeping the house since she had moved out. Her smirk changed to disbelief. Without staying for the scene to escalate, I hoped Julie didn't see my eyes fill with tears. In silence, she remained quiet as I walked away. Glancing back, I saw Julie crying uncontrollably. Moments later, Frida returned, confused, then smiled broadly upon seeing the papers. Frida led the discussion for the next hour. 15 minutes in, Julie stopped shedding tears. 60 minutes thereafter, she seemed completely relaxed, convinced by Frida that their plan was unfolding as expected. That night, my sleep was troubled, haunted by the thought of the impending final confrontation and the continued agony of a woman constantly on my mind. I anticipated Frida's next day visit, pretending not to be home when she arrived. I ignored several of her attempts to reach out, while Julie remained out of touch. By 1:30, I found myself at Sarah's front door. On sight of the red roses in my grasp, she welcomed me with a hug, eager to catch up on my recent experiences. It was apparent Sarah had keen. She understood that the exchange of roses between friends was unusual, especially under these circumstances. She invited me in, and upon meeting the elderly lady, Sarah linked her arm with mine, saying, "Dave, meet my mother, Laura. Mum, this is Dave, my boyfriend." I was at a loss for words, though in a good way for once. I wondered about what Sarah might have divulged to her mother. Laura's question about whether everything was resolved showed her inquisitiveness. I shared the latest developments, voicing my concern that Julia may not have taken our situation seriously. Convincing them of my sincerity involved elaborating on how the violation of norms showed a lack of respect towards me. Their understanding was palpable, with Laura offering a consoling hug. Subsequently, a young girl, Hannah, came into the room after her nap, visibly upset upon hearing that Sarah and I had made plans. Despite Laura's reassurances about the fun that awaited Hannah and her, I softly inquired if Hannah could accompany us. "Really? It would be great if we could pack her necessities. I'm hesitant to leave her for a whole week, so spending the whole weekend together means a lot." Hannah's spirits were lifted upon hearing the news. Later, by the river, despite Sarah feeling somewhat left out, her wide smile convinced me not to dwell on her words. After bringing the ladies back home, Laura kindly offered dinner. I left with a simple peck on Sarah's cheek. Upon my return home, Julie appeared, previously hidden further down the street. I had barely approached my door when she pulled into the driveway. Remaining in her vehicle with the engine running, she exited, clutching the documents I had given her the prior Saturday. "Here you go, Dave, signed and witnessed." "Good night," she said, rendering me speechless as she got back into her car, buckled up, shifted the vehicle into reverse, lowered her window, and said, "Having uncovered your scheme, maybe you'll ask me out this week. Wednesday works for me." With that, she drove off. In a figurative sense, it seemed as if men are from Mars, women from Venus. I'm grounded on Earth, while Julie appears to hail from somewhere within the Horsehead Nebula. If one could assign a sound to our predicament, it would mimic a ghostly moan, starting Monday night as Frida awaited me in the driveway upon my arrival from work. Before I could react, she enveloped me with a kiss. Exiting the car, I hastily shoved her away, exclaiming, "I want you to understand once and for all, I have no feelings for you, Frida. Her potential response was lost amid the roar of the engine and the screeching of tires as Julie appeared from her hiding place. Seeing Julie approach, Frida tried to escape down the driveway just in time, but Julie was already speeding towards her, barely avoiding a collision. Once Julie stopped, she swung the door open, knocking Frida to the ground. Frida quickly got up, only to be knocked down again by a hit, her anger palpable. This time, Frida chose not to get up immediately. Normally, it was smarter to stay down to avoid confronting a furiously deceived tiger. Julie started kicking her. Her rage was uncontainable. Finally, when Julie grew tired yet remained furious, I managed to subdue her. At that moment, a police car drove by. Both Julie and I were handcuffed, and an ambulance was called for Frida. The police, initially, questioned Julie. Her shouts echoed to my cell. Eventually, they ceased and moved her to a cell across from mine to settle down. During my questioning, I explained the whole incident, trying to rationalize Julie's actions, feeling a duty of care towards her. I was released with an apology at 11 p.m. On Monday, I headed to my workplace. Returning, I reached out to Sarah, receiving an invitation for another dinner and conveying Hannah's desire for that sweet Dave to read me a bedtime story tonight. Arriving at my residence took an extra hour due to collaboration with Frida's father, including a visit to his home to discuss matters with him and his partner. The conversation was about their daughter's dishonest actions towards my spouse, to which they reacted without much astonishment. I pressed them to convince Frida to retract her allegations of assault against Julie. Their commitment was to give their best effort. Upon reaching my abode, I discovered Julie's vehicle parked in the garage. As I entered the main bedroom, her unpacked suitcases were visible on the bed, and the sound of the shower echoed. My call to Sarah was to cancel our dinner plans. We pondered over Julie's forthcoming actions. In hindsight, our predictions were off-mark. Julie made her way down, exuding her usual confidence. "What's for dinner, Dave?" she queried. My response was silence, prompting her to move closer, standing directly in front of me. "I've chosen to forgive you, Dave. Acknowledging we both might have been slightly imprudent, let's look beyond it." I've returned, finding my voice. I couldn't hold back. "Could you explain how my actions were mildly imprudent, Julia, and which deeds of mine led to your forgiveness? Specifically, the anguish your rash decision for separation caused me, Dave, was immensely unjust. Luckily, I realized you were feigning the whole situation. Why do you assume it was merely a facade, Julie? Frida's revelations were her source. Until that moment, Julie had been somewhat under Frida's influence. Now, that semblance shattered. Her face paled, and she slumped onto the coffee table with a thud as she grasped the new reality. This lasted for a brief duration. We're concluding our relationship, correct? The divorce wasn't just a sham, was it? My belief in it was wholehearted. I've just accepted it. I gently swung my head in dismay. Just for clarity. Julie, our separation isn't because you disregarded me. I've always done my utmost for you, my reward. You departed, leaving me in solitude and neglect. I cautioned you, didn't I? Warned about the peril. Wasn't I explicit enough? After all my devotion and labor, I expected, no, I was entitled to some degree of respect and loyalty. Were they granted? No. I faced metaphorical kicks, disrespect, devastation, and confusion. Did you ever evaluate our relationship's effort disparity and the skewed results I've noted these past weeks? No, you let someone's deceit persuade you there was more to attain. Now, that's impossible. I've concluded it's over with Frida. How did we even arrive here? Listen, this isn't about Frida. Clearly, I eventually realized her scheme was solely to drive a wedge between us, yet I never regarded her beyond the manipulative individual she proved to be. So, all is resolved now, right, Dave? That marked the decisive moment, the point of no return. No, Julie, we're not all right. The divorce is finalized. I cannot overlook the continuous disrespect and ultimatums you've posed. Let me tell you, your decision to cast me out found me unexpectedly supported. What do you mean, Dave? I found someone new, Julie. She started as just a supportive friend through it all. God knows that support was what I needed. You left me behind. I'm sorry, Julie, but you gambled and it didn't work out. With a clear conscience, I embrace a fresh start. Dear listeners, I invite your opinions in the comment section below and encourage you to like, share, and subscribe.